Well, fantasy. It's a genre that a lot of us on BookTube love. It's probably the most popular genre on this platform that is discussed, aside from maybe romance or literary fiction. You get the idea. Well, I wanted to add my own hat into the ring. I mean, I talk a lot about fantasy on this channel already, so that's not really hard, but I really wanted to do something a little different. I didn't want to just regurgitate the same things that everyone else says, because I have a bit of a pathological hipsterish streak that I just can't help but try to do things differently. So how do I manage to make my own dent in my own way that will get people to watch? Because, well, fantasy is such a popular genre, and it's a genre that I love alongside many other people. How about I start a show about it? So let's get into it before I ramble on for too much longer, shall I? Hello, everyone. Britton here, also known as Some Okie Dude, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the first episode of a new show I'm doing called The Fate of Fantasy, where I talk about all things fantasy, where I talk about the genre, the history of the genre, subtropes, basically whatever topic enters my mind and I think is worth interest and worth talking about. I love fantasy. I know a lot of other people love fantasy too. But instead of just, doing regular reviews, like a normal person, I mean, I still will be doing the regular reviews, I decided to also do something that could probably help fellow booktubers, educate people, inform people about this genre, because the fantasy genre is a very, let's say, varied genre, with a very long history going all the way back to ancient times. I mean, hell, you could consider the mythological stories, such as the Iliad and Beowulf. Dr. Philip Chase might show up if I'm not too careful here. It goes back all that way. And I thought, why don't I make a show where I discuss the genre history of fantasy? So that's where The Fate of Fantasy was birthed. I also had a really great conversation with Philip and Rav talking about if fantasy could be considered real capital L literature that really also helped inspire the idea some more. So I don't want to waste any more time, so I'm going to talk about what is The Fate of Fantasy, which is the first episode of this saga. So a lot of people have been asking me, Britton, what is The Fate of Fantasy?
What the hell is even that?
Well, it's a show that I've started following up the success of The State of Science Fiction, my show that I've been running for the past year, where I get science fiction authors and fans to come on my channel and discuss where the science fiction genre is headed and why it's important as a genre and what we think science fiction is and what we think makes good science fiction, the whole shebang. But will this be what this show will be about? Does that make sense? I'm not entirely sure, but you guys get what I mean. Is this what this show is going to be about? Well, not quite. Will be kind of, but not quite. The Fate of Fantasy was birthed out of a desire of mine to educate people about the genre of fantasy. As I mentioned earlier, the fantasy genre has a very long history with many different tropes, archetypes, stories, subgenres, etc. A lot of people just seem to think that J.R.R. Tolkien showed up, invented the genre, and don't really think much else about the many stories and authors and movements that have proven influential on the genre that we know and love today. It's even worse when some people think that George R.R. Martin and Joe Abercrombie made it up, and they don't really do anything, they don't really say or look back anywhere else. It's you might think I'm kidding when I'm saying that, but really, look it up. I'm not kidding. Now, before people get mad, I'm not saying everyone thinks this way. There are many amazing booktubers that I could mention that go the extra mile and talk about fantasy novels that have been pushed to the wayside and take the fantasy genre seriously as a genre and talk about the many stories and subgenres and tropes that have made up said genres. There are even some that I'm actually hoping to have on this very show, so keep an eye on that. And hell, there are even booktubers that aren't as touched by Tolkien as many others are. Well, at least the books anyway. I know the movies are very popular as well. So, I'm going with the books and movies. Sorry, I'm not on it today. I also started this series because there are several fantasy subgenres and authors and tropes that I think are very unfairly overlooked, and I want more people to know about them and give it some more exposure if I possibly can because of how popular fantasy is on the BookTube sphere. Hell, even get some of the bigger bigger booktubers in on this. Johan, Daniel Green, take some notes. Anyway, but what specifically are you going to be talking about? I mean, you've said certain tropes and subgenres and authors, but which ones specifically would you like to talk about? Well, I'm hoping to get to a wide range of topics on this show. This won't be exactly like the State of Science Fiction where I get a certain fan or aficionado on and we talk about what fantasy is, what we think it is, what makes good fantasy, and the whole shebang. I mean, maybe I'll have episodes talking about that, but it won't be like the State of Science Fiction. Sometimes there will be... I'm actually hoping to cover a bunch of topics. Sometimes it will have me on there. Sometimes it will be me and a guest. And it won't just be me having the guest on for one time. I'm actually hoping to have on recurring guests to the show, but I'll get to that in a minute. I'm hoping to cover a bunch of topics here, though, while I'm here on the Fate of Fantasy show. I'm hoping to cover subgenres like sword and sorcery, English fairy tales / fantasy, fairy tales in general, maybe some of the mythological influences on fantasy, grimdark, magical realism, tropes and archetypes such as the quest narrative. We'll even talk about authors who have profoundly impacted the genre, such as George R.R. Martin, Robert E. Howard, Michael Moorcock, and of course, everyone's favorite Oxford professor, J.R.R. Tolkien. Anyway, there are going to be plenty of other ideas that I would like to play with in the future, and there's actually a couple episodes that I'm actually hoping to put out soon, which will probably be just me, and hopefully I'll work towards getting more guests on. But, we'll see about that. But I do have a lot of ideas that I'm playing with that I'm hoping to keep under wraps for right now, because some of these ideas aren't fully formed yet. And I'm hoping to get more people in on this show because there's a lot of people I would love to talk to on the Fate of Fantasy. So let's move on. So, will this show be like the State of Science Fiction where I get certain fantasy aficionados, authors, and fans on and talk about what they think fantasy is as a genre and where it's headed? Again, not quite. Like I said, I'm hoping that this will be more of an educational show, so a lot of it is probably going to be me, or me and some guests, exploring a particular subgenre, author, trope, topic in fantasy that seems to be capturing a lot of people's attention, because, well, that's always a thing. There's always new controversies and topics being discussed by the fantasy fans and intelligentsia. Sometimes it'll be just me sitting here, and sometimes I'll be joined by certain guests. But guests, Britain, like who? Well, there's a couple I would like to have on, the usual suspects, as I like to call them. People like Philip Chase and Raph Blue Text and Liam from Liam's Lyceum and maybe Bridger from the library later. I would like to have him on some episodes, and maybe even Dr. Fireballs himself, Dr. A.P. Canavan. Seriously, if you watch this video, I would love to have you on the show at some point. Anyway, I'll list a few that I've probably forgotten to talk about here in the video. There's probably a couple other people I would like to have on and talk about the show with, and talk about the genre with, and hopefully we'll have a good time. So, yeah, I have a lot of plans for this show, and I hope that it'll go on for a while. I'm really hoping that this show can educate, inform, and maybe even inspire some people to look up books that they might not have even heard of, if not for this show. Because I'm really passionate about the genre, and I want people to become more knowledgeable about it, and I want to explore the genre as thoroughly as I possibly can. Because we all need that in our world, we need more education and information about certain things that we love, and, now I'm just talking out of my ass here. But yes, I'm really excited for the Fate of Fantasy. I'm really excited for you guys to see more episodes of the Fate of Fantasy. I have a couple that I would like to do soon. I'm hoping to do one talking about what the fantasy genre is specifically. At least, hopefully, we'll pull some ideas from other booktubers who have discussed similar ideas. And hopefully I'll work towards doing more guest episodes as well. Like I said, sometimes it'll be just me. Sometimes I will have guests on to talk about certain tropes, subtropes, subgenres, ideas that have been played around, and topics that a lot of people have covered about the fantasy genre. So, yeah, I'm really excited about all of it, and I'm really hoping that this show blows up, because I really would like people to watch this, and I'm really excited, and I'm hoping you guys are excited too, because this should be a lot of fun. Yeah, I guess I should end this before I ramble on for too long. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you want, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me on Twitter. You can also find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, excuse me, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. I don't use Blue Sky very much, but I'm slowly starting to use the site more and more. As I said before, like, subscribe, comment. As my friend John Minton likes to say, it feels good when you do it. So, yeah, this is the Fate of Fantasy Episode 1. I hope the explanation of what this show is will be satisfactory for a lot of you. And if you guys are excited, please let me know in the comments. If you have any ideas for episodes, please let me know. I mean, I have plenty of episode ideas in general, but I would love to hear from you guys as well. So, yeah. I guess I should go now because, well, I have other things I'm going to do this evening. So, until next time, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Very excited for the Fate of Fantasy, and until next episode.